stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the heart of Texas, the prairie sky is wide and high. Deep in the heart of Texas.
Hey everybody, it's the Trout and welcome to the Trout Show. Thank you so much for stopping by. What you've been listening to is Deep in the Heart of Texas by a great performer that I interview on this episode of the Trout Show, Dave Alexander. For those people that don't know, that's what we refer to as Texas swing music. Dave was kind enough to sit down and talk about his career as a Texas swing artist, but the more importantly to me was the story that here's a guy that started out playing jazz and became so well known of playing Texas swing. That's all in the story on this episode, plus a lot of other things. Dave has played with phenomenally famous musicians, Lyle Lovett, Sleep at the Wheel. He'll tell you about that during this episode. I love his music, but here's the thing that Dave's done. He's actually taken his music and put a symphony orchestra with it, and now he's traveling throughout Texas with symphony orchestras there and doing his performance. Music just like you're hearing now. So if you want to know more about Dave Alexander, Texas swing music, and what's happening with that, stick around, watch or listen to this episode, because up next is Dave Alexander, the king, in my opinion, of Texas swing. That's next on The Trout Show. You grew up in Denton. Where did you grow up?
Actually, I grew up in Oklahoma. I was born in Perry and then moved over to Tulsa, went to Broken Arrow High School, lived my time in Oklahoma, and then went to Oklahoma State for a year and then came down here. So I've been here since my second year of college. And
you went to UNT, right?
Yes, UNT.
Did you graduate from UNT?
Yes, sure did.
Okay. And what was your degree in?
I have a trumpet performance degree with a minor in theory and piano. And so I was a trumpet player, and I have a jazz studies degree with as a trumpeter. So a performance degree.
I always wonder about this because I know all the musicians that are up there. You have to try out to get a UNT to get into the music program. Yeah. You do, don't you?
Yeah.
You have to be good before you even get there.
That's right. They set a pretty high level before they'll even take you. And
so no, go ahead.
Then it really goes up.
Yeah.
Then hang on because they're going to ring you.
Well, what did you start on? You started on piano or did you start on trumpet?
I started on trumpet. Yeah, I started on trumpet, but I was 4. My dad was a player. My dad was a really great jazz player. And,
what did he play?
He played an instrument called the Superbone, which was a combination of a valve and slide trombone.
Oh, I have seen those. I haven't seen them in a long time.
Yeah, he and Maynard were the only two that were really given the horn from the Holton company that built it. And Maynard had trouble with it, but my dad was a bone player, so he didn't have any trouble with it.
Maynard as in Maynard?
Maynard Ferguson.
That's who I thought you were talking
about. Yeah, the trumpeter. Yeah, my dad and Maynard were big buds, and they were both working on this Superbone at the same time. And the other day I just saw a super trumpet. I saw a guy on the internet with this, and I thought, now that's what Maynard should have had, but my dad needed the bone. So he was working on his PhD, and I would come down while I was in high school and I'd spend the summers here.
Okay. So was he going to UNT also?
Yeah, he went to UNT also.
Okay.
Yeah, he was the assistant director of the 1 o'clock. I went to the.
Oh, that's right. You did tell me that before.
Yeah, to Europe with the 1 o'clock when I was 10 because my dad was assistant director. My parents were split up, and the guys could take their wives, so my dad took me. So I went to Europe with all the greats of the Lou Marinis and those guys that were on the Tonight Show Tonight Show and the Blues Brothers and all that group. Those were all my dad's friends.
Wow.
Then I come in a few years later and pick it up from there. So I feel like I've been here since I was 12,
Well, pretty much you have.
Yeah,
well,
really.
So here's a guy that grows up around jazz.
Yeah.
And then you say, where was the change? You said, I want to be a cowboy, Western swing guy.
Yeah.
When did that all come into play? And I know, we talked about this, but not people watching this don't know. But you played with Lyle Lovett for years.
Yeah.
And who else did you play with?
Oh, I toured with Willie. I recorded with Straight. Gosh, I should have got my list because I leave people out. Randy Travis,
Wow.
Sheryl Crow, Toby Keith. Um, I have to get a list.
Well, Dave, were you considered a hired gun, or you just were you? They just needed somebody they knew who to call.
You know, I encouraged them as much as they encouraged me to be there. I was a jazz player, and that's my background. And
Yeah.
I was a jazz trumpet player. And there came a point where I could either go. My college roommate has played for the Rolling Stones for the last 40 years. I mean, and I had an opportunity to go that way and go to New York, or go the way I went. And it really, I started playing trumpet when I was 4.
Right.
I started riding a horse that same year. My neighbor had a horse that he would just turn me loose on. And I was a cowboy. I was a cowboy all through growing up. And my granddaddy and on my mother's side were all ranchers and cowboys. And my dad's side were all musicians. And so here I sit in the middle. And I'm going, well, I want a jazz degree, and I want to be the best jazz player I can be. That's what's so cool. And that's just it. But fate would have it that my two worlds combined whenever I was working for Neiman Marcus, working at downtown Fort Worth, Texas. And I got this gig playing for Neiman's doing cowboy music, the Red River Brass for the Red River Saloon. And they sold everything Red River could be. And that was the year that the John Travolta movie came out. That was Barry Corbin, a buddy of mine, Barry Corbin's first movie. And the whole country went cowboy for about 3 months, or maybe 6.
Was it urban cowboy?
Flowers, they put feathers on the top of their hats, and Neiman sold everything cowboy that they could. So I was at school. I was at North Texas, and the guy that was the leader was a guy named Bobby Knight, not the basketball coach, but another guy named Bobby Knight, who was a producer of some music out in L.A. Mary Hartman, and some of them.
I remember that show.
Remember that?
Sure.
He did all the music for those soaps, and was a great studio cat out there. Did the Oscars, did everything. I mean, when you moved out to LA, if you were a player, you just worked your butt off. It was great world.
That was in the 70s, I guess, when I moved.
That would have been in the late 70s. Yeah.
Early 70s. Yeah.
Mary Hartman, 77, 78, 79 in there. So I get this gig, and it's so Neiman's forms the Red River Brass, which this guy was a brass player and included himself in there. So he had 2 trumpets and 2 trombones, and then a country rhythm section. And we played country music like Muzak, like we'd play 9 to 5 with trumpets. Nobody sang it. We'd play all these hits that were in country music,
right?
All instrumental. And the Neiman's people went nuts over it. And so they flew us to all the different Neiman's to promote the Red River Brass. We wore all their clothing, hats, shirt, everything.
Yeah.
And we promoted that. And my dad and I would stay in touch, and he called me and said, "What are you up to?" And I said, "Man, I'm playing this gig downtown Fort Worth." And he said, it's a country gig, but every now and then it swings like hell. They open it up and we improvise, and people get on the tables. I watch the Bass Brothers, the big dogs, these rich people get on tables clapping and go nuts.
That's fine.
And my dad looks at me and says, "That's Western swing." And I said, "Okay." He said, "You know what that is?" Because my dad had done it in Oklahoma when I was 2 and 3 and 4 years old.
Yeah.
And I didn't remember it. And I said, "Well, if it's so big, why don't I know what it is? I had never heard of that, but we improvise." And so that was the best part of it. And he said, so about 2 weeks later, I got a package on my doorstep with about 200 hours of Western swing music that he had recorded with Bob Wills, Johnny Lee Wills, Hank Thompson, Glenn Campbell. My dad had played with all those guys, and he said, and I do remember meeting Bob Wills's brother, Johnny Lee. I never met Bob. I'm like Ray Benson. We did a play on the fact that he never met Bob, but I met Johnny Lee, and he always would say, "I'm gonna put old Dave on my horse, Pumpkin," and I was so scared of this horse that because he was just churning, and sweating and just wild. I thought, and my dad used to tell me if he'd had to ride him in a parade, they'd get up, some old boy would get up at 4 a.m. and ride that horse from 4 till 10:30. And then they'd dad him to Johnny Lee. So long story short, which I'm not doing, I'm getting off.
That's all right.
I got this thing where I get find this Western swing music, which includes jazz. It's jazz with cowboy hats. And that opened a whole new door to me. And all of a sudden I started transcribing. Here's the key of I think why I'm where I am. And I mean that humbly.
Yeah.
I went to a school that taught me if a bee flies by me, I could orchestrate that for clarinet. I could orchestrate anything. They taught us to find sounds and noises and how to write them down, rhythm or full orchestration, and all the piano and all that. And so I started transcribing some of those old songs that my dad had sent me.
Oh, yeah.
Because, man, they were swingers, and those guys could cook. And I mean, it was good. And so I literally transcribed about 5 of them and had some buddies come over to my apartment and at school, and we rehearsed. I said, I want you guys to play this stuff. This stuff swings. And then we're going to open it for solos. We're going to improvise. We're going to do the head just like we do a jazz tune. And I knew at that point it was going to be a big deal. So go forward, and my first album were some of those charts. Mm-hmm. But I'd gathered all the old Playboys. I got real wise to this whole little scene, and I'd gathered all the living Playboys, Texas Playboys at that time. And I made my first album, and I called it The Legends of Western Swing. And these were all featuring me with Texas Playboys. And I have I keep a picture of them, but I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 of the Playboys that were still living, original Texas Playboys.
Wow.
I made an album, and my mom was helping me with promotion. She would always send stuff out to people for me to get gigs. She sent that album to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. They called me and hired me to be their house band for the rodeo.
Wow.
And the next year, I was playing for every major star in country music. That was the bigger. I was working for the Dallas Cowboys at the time, and we were twice as big as the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys had 10 home games. Houston Rodeo had 20.
So were you playing in a band for the Cowboys? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, yeah, I played for the Cowboys for years.
Yeah.
I did the anthem. I filled in for a guy named Tommy Loy, who was my dad's real good friend of my dad's. And Tommy got cancer and was beginning to retire. And Tex Schramm hired me, and I became the soloist for the Dallas Cowboys. But I was really there to play the national anthem if Tommy didn't feel good. And then I went on with that and started writing and producing for the Cowboys while I was doing everything else. You know, music's music. You do what you do, and you pick your places. So I get this gig with the Houston Rodeo, and all of a sudden, all those guys, I took all those those Texas Playboys down there with me. And the main stage would be like George Strait and Brooks and Dunn and Vince Gill and Reba McEntire. Their whole band was always over with my band because all these legends, really legends, they were like getting autographs and stuff.
Yeah, you know? I got it.
And Marty Stewart came over and got some autographs one time, and he had to go over and play the main stage, and I had to open for him. But so I guess that answers your question of how I got the cowboy stuff. I always had the cowboy. When I went to North Texas, I put my hat and my boots in the closet. I didn't think they'd take me seriously, and it wasn't a time to be a cowboy. It was a time to be a Miles Davis understudy and a Clark Terry understudy and a John Coltrane understudy. Not, you know, they would associate that with twang and maybe not the level. And it turns out I know more than graduate, and I'm wearing a hat and boots again, and I haven't looked back since. You know,
I think the one thing you're not saying, which I will say for you, is that fact that you're a great player.
Well,
and I'm going to tell you this, Dave. It is amazing to me how many people I have interviewed that are famous, that still have that, and you're like, well, I did this and all that. And all I'm thinking about when you talk to your mom, I'm going like, we were really, and you still are phenomenally good.
Yeah.
You don't get those paths. I mean, you get luck. We all know music is luck
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
degree, but you don't get there unless you're good. And the other part of it is that I admire people like you because you do understand the fact that you can orchestrate and all that stuff. I know good music. I can write a song,
Yeah.
I can write stuff,
Yeah.
and I know kind of the theory, but to sit around and go, because we were talking, Keith Jordan.
Very well.
And
Yeah. He's on
Keith,
my latest album.
oh,
Yeah.
he is. And so Keith
Yeah.
and I, for those people who don't know, Keith has been a tremendous trumpet player, and Keith and I
Fantastic.
played at a church band. I
Yeah.
played lead guitar, and he played. So Keith and I are close to the same age, and so we joke about stuff. And we occasionally bring people in that wanted to come in and play, and I'll never forget this because I knew how good he was. I could hear.
Mhm.
I mean, I knew how good he was. But they give me like chord charts. I listen
Yeah.
by ear and play it.
Right.
And
Right.
and so these people come in one time, and they were from UNT. I think they were playing violins. They were playing for some special gig.
Yeah.
And I looked over their shoulder and I said to them, "Hey, is that music? Is that what they call me?" I mean, and I'm going. They look at me like I'm serious,
Well, yeah.
because I'm like, I'm kidding. I know what it is. I just
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
read it very well.
Right.
But I remember one time I talked to Keith, and I said, we did a Christmas album. He came in, wanted me to play guitar, and he did that. He cut it at home, and we did some stuff. And I said, what's the difference between you, and this is what brings back to you too, than a normal player, so to speak?
Mhm.
And because with me, I grew up playing blues. I'm a rock guy, and it's
Yeah.
like if you want to do a jam in A or whatever 1-4-5 you want to do it, I know what that
Right.
is. He said people that read music, like symphony people, and all that, they can't do that.
Right.
Unless the music's notes are written there.
It's written down. You're right.
So you're one of those people, because I guess because of the jazz end of it,
Yeah.
you have to figure out, I got a jam here. What am I going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I told you this originally when I originally talked to you on the phone about this album that you gave me. I played it for my wife in the car because I still have a CD player in my car.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting because I love talking to different people that play music. That's just what I do. I mean, I do have a tendency to go with more rock blues people because I know we are
Yeah.
people in that area. But listening to yours kind of brought back not memories of Roy Rogers and all that stuff, I guess to a certain degree. But it was like, and you were talking about the Texas Playboys and all that stuff. Wouldn't it have been nice to have the recording equipment we have today to record those people the way they really sound? I mean, I
Yeah.
always think about that. People like the Everly Brothers and all the people like that.
Oh, I
and
know.
thinking, oh man, if we just could have got that, because they're
Right.
taking the lathe and cutting the album and stuff like
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
So I think it was, to me, I really enjoy it because it's different.
Yeah.
Like you said to me, it's country, but not really country too much. It's got a little of that stuff in there. And I have to admit, when you started telling me about how you wrote it and arranged the arrangement with your friend, I guess you said
Yeah.
that you have a friend now.
Yeah.
I admire that. I mean, I
Oh,
really do. To be a good player
Yeah.
and then being able to do that. And I know it's because you had the skill and you went to school to get it,
Yeah.
but you've been doing it all these years.
I have. I have. I put myself in that position with these other bands when I first started playing with Asleep at the Wheel, and when I first started playing my Western Swing, the Legends of Western Swing. The Playboys didn't have a horn section. The wheel needed parts. I would write those parts out and do the horns, and that's how I first started playing with Ray and those guys. I just brought the horn section and I brought the parts, and I knew when to tell them when to play because the rhythm section wasn't on a chart. They were just playing,
Yeah.
and sometimes it would open. I'd have to say, "Okay, we're at the bridge," and we'd play what I'd written for 16 bars,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that just in that setting of you kind of make yourself a job, and then you try to work your way up to get with the people that you want. I was always the kind of guy like I'd go to a football game when I was a little kid, and there'd be some person singing the national anthem, and I'd say, how do you get to be that guy? How do you do that? What steps do you take to be that guy?
Yeah.
And the more I watched these other musicians that came through my house as a kid, and my friends that went on, and North Texas guys, and knowing all those Blues Brothers guys and those guys before me, my dad's buds, how their life went and how they took off. Man, it was great to follow. But I had to say, now how do I do that in my world of Texas music? Because I'm going to stay here. When you get to a point at North Texas, you decide it's either New York or LA, or used to be Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'll end up in Vegas. I'll lay by the pool till about 4 o'clock every day. And I'll go take a shower, put on a tux, and I'll go to work. I'll play for Tom Jones or Engelbert Humperdinck or whoever it is.
Yeah.
Well, things change. That's what you think when you get there, but then the world just opened up. And so I think, it takes both. You have to be able to play and write to get people to do what you want them to do, and that was just always a rule of my family. Was every teacher plays and every player teaches. If you can't teach it, you can't play it. If you can't play it, you can't teach it. And so I taught school for 6 years, right out of college. Also, I taught at Arts Magnet. I had a little student named Roy Hargrove, and I had a few others I've got my kids have won Grammys. I'm real proud of those kids.
Oh, sure.
But you have to, by teaching it, you really teach yourself how to get to the depths of it. To explain it to somebody else, you have to have it figured out. That's the best way.
I think the hardest thing for most people that don't understand music, they like it, is they don't understand the nuances in it. Yeah. In other words, and this is a question I have for you, because was it a combination? So they said, okay, you got 16 bars here to fill in.
Yeah.
Do you kind of, like me when I'm writing a song, I hear stuff? Or is it a combination of hearing it and then going, okay, I can add this because I did it before, because you've done it before? I assume it's a combination, right?
Right. Because before I had a horn section, it was just me, and I was on the road with them, and I had to just fill. All I would do was take those fills and I'd write it for 4 other guys, and we'd all play it together. Or I'd write that line in harmony that needed to be the lead, or needed to be the with the Playboy stuff, and the music that I got from my dad was so hip, was that there would be all these inner riffs that would be behind either the soloist or the melody when that was happening, that the band would do, that were really great riffs. They just never got out because it was usually just one guy. Yeah. And I wrote those riffs out and orchestrated it for a couple of guys. And wow, all of a sudden it was like, where'd that come from? That was great. It added more to songs like San Antonio Rose or Won't You Ride in My Little Red Wagon or any of those songs, were those background riffs that these guys in the old days would make up and just do, fantastically. So
well, so much to me is in the background that you can't really, it's there, but you really don't hear it, so to speak.
Yeah.
Especially in recording.
Exactly. So when you kind of bring that more to the forefront, it really causes the whole thing like a wave to move a little further and a little higher. It grabs you more, it makes it more fun.
When's the last big gig you did with Lyle? Was Lyle the last big performer you worked with for a while, or has there been somebody else since then?
No. Okay, I'm bad with yesterday's dates.
That's always all right. I understand.
Looking at full. The last time I recorded with Lyle was the last Asleep at the Wheel album that I did, and we did Trouble in Mind, and I wrote the parts and played on it with him and did that, and then in 2017 I did the straight tour, Cowboy Rides Away.
Oh, okay.
Out at the stadium, 104,000, largest until Taylor Swift. It was the largest indoor concert ever. And she came out there and packed a few more in a few years later, recently. But that was a thrill. And so really, and then I just finished Wichita Falls. I did the symphony in Wichita Falls with my own band. And I've got 2 of those coming up. I've got McKinney coming up in October and the Irving Symphony coming up in November.
So what are you doing in McKinney then?
The same thing. They have a symphony, the McKinney Philharmonic.
And what are they playing?
And they're where or what?
I mean, what are they performing? Have they told you?
They're doing my show. Oh, so now that entire album is a
Oh, dude,
symphony
you got to
show.
tell me. I didn't know that. I want
Oh
to come
yeah.
see it.
Oh no, I'm sorry. So I'm touring with symphonies. That's my main thing now.
Wow.
I
And how
haven't been
many's in
doing
your
that
band? How many
with
band
the.
members you have?
I usually take 5 or 6, uh, and it depends on kind of who the guys I can get, because a couple of
Yeah.
my guys still work for some big boys,
Right.
and so if I can get them, I'll squeeze them in. If not, I've got great players that cover for me. And then just depending on the budget, we have a 3-layered system in symphony A, B, and C. And if it's a B or better, they can afford just about anybody.
Right.
And so I strive to get some of those guys,
That's
to get
I think that's really I think the thing people don't know about is Western swing.
Ray Benson and I have both been talking about this for a long time, and he's done it too. He just didn't quite do the. I mean, our show's a little bit different
Right.
in that mine is more about the orchestra than it is about my little group up here. Mine's about including that orchestra on lines that Johnny Gimbel played with Bob Wills 50 years ago, and those kinds of things. And so I got that. I was the house pianist for the Morton Meyerson Center for 30 years. Okay, I played in the Opus before all the concerts, and I had it full. Like when I wasn't on the road, I had a full gig, and then when I'd go out on the road, I'd get somebody to sub for me. But I played solo piano at the Meyerson for 30 years, and then would go to the symphony, and I went to all of the symphony, the classical and the pops, everything they were doing, and I would always attend and soak in that music. It was part of the gig for me. I got to do that. I got to eat, and then I got to go see a symphony show, and was blown away a billion times. Just moved incredibly. And I was there through the Marvin Hamlish years,
Oh.
and I was there when Jeff Tysick came along. He's out of Berkeley, and he shocked me one day, and he was conducting the Pops Orchestra. I think doing something. It might have been music like by Ella Fitzgerald or something.
Yeah.
And he's clicking along, and he's written all this stuff, and he's brought 3 vocalists that nobody knows who they are. They're just from New York. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, they were Broadway gals, and they were killer. But he just rolls in. These no names show up, and you'd think Ella Fitzgerald's standing there. But he's conducting along, and all of a sudden he throws down that stick, reaches down and grabs a little shepherd's crook cornet, turns around to the crowd and plays a chorus in the middle of something like, Don't Get Around Much Anymore or something.
Yeah.
Put it back down, picked it up, and cued the, and I went, it's slacking up, it's lightening up here. You couldn't have done this 30 years ago.
No.
They'd have kicked you out. They'd have said, no, we don't do anything like that. It's our generation is now the generation that's in control, so to speak.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, hey, if you want to play 32 bars in the middle of your symphony show, go right ahead. So when I bring these improvisers and myself, the symphony people are just, I got some video of this one little viola player. She's just rocking so hard. She's about to knock the stand over, having so much fun. It's bringing something to symphony and stepping us up to we're not, playing just dance halls anymore or concerts with the big guys. We're going to symphony halls. And that's something that I think, I always dreamed of this a long time ago and just thought one of these days, because some of this music is so darn pretty that when you fill it with, you throw 20 strings on top of it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. It'll give you goosebumps.
It's always interesting to me when you see a rock band bring in a symphony to play behind them.
Yeah, the Eagles. Yeah, I was at that. That was my last concert before COVID. My wife and I went to hear the Eagles, and I went specifically because there was going to be a symphony.
And I always sit around, and one of my favorite bands that they've had so many iterations is Yes. Has been around. They're what they call
oh yeah,
they've been around for decades.
Yes.
And they did a concert several years ago. I think it was in Switzerland or someplace over in Europe where they brought in a symphony orchestra. And I thought, I can only imagine them sitting there talking about their music, and I want you to add something to it. Because, you're talking about, just like you said, it's 2 different things that are kind of coming together, trying to figure out how it works. I mean, you can sit
Absolutely.
back and go, okay, I'll put stuff on the back end,
Yeah. Yeah.
but what's the point in doing that? I mean,
No.
we can add a track to that and just pretend we have a
Exactly.
symphony.
Exactly.
And so I always think about that and are like, okay, but there's people in these bands, I know some of them, I don't know personally, have to know music because,
Hmm.
or they bring in somebody that knows and say, okay, think about this. They're not sitting around with an orchestra conductor going, okay, can you put a little ditty in here or something?
Yeah.
They're not doing that. When I listen to yours, of course, I'm old enough to know swing music because
Right.
I watch the old movies with that stuff in. And of course, the recording of the movies are faded and all that stuff. And I always thought it was kind of funny, all the cowboys singing cowboys and all that stuff, and they'd be walking along, hey, how about a song, girl?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's
And
right. That was the magic back in the
that was the
day.
magic back then.
Magic.
But to see someone like you taking not just that, but the swing era and taking it to doing what you're doing, that's really kind of a cool thing to do. And more importantly, you're living your dream, brother.
Yeah, I am.
It,
Yeah.
I mean,
I,
you're not
I'm,
20 years old, but it doesn't matter when it
no,
reaches, it's
that's
fun.
right. That's right. I couldn't have done it when I was 20. I don't think even if I had the tools that I have
Yeah,
now, it just wasn't ready. The symphony
no,
world wasn't ready.
no.
And I've heard the stories from some of my conductor friends who went to school with my dad. Uh, um, uh, just John Giordano was 22 years with the Fort Worth Symphony, and his struggle into trying to bring pops to the Fort Worth Symphony, and
They were
what
like,
a
no way.
difficult. They were no way,
Yeah.
and so there were a lot of guys like he and some others that have helped pave the way, but it has slacked up a little bit to where they're well. And the other thing is, and just like for Dallas, I've been involved with that symphony. I'm the conductor of the Symphony League. I'm their music director, so I put on a couple of shows for them through the year, and
Hmm.
I conduct for that. I've watched them have to afford to play classical music. In other words, the classical music wasn't cutting the mustard to pay enough money to have that big
No.
a budget. It's those pop shows that run through
Oh yeah,
there.
let's do a John Williams show. Okay, everybody's going to
Yeah,
buy tickets for that.
right, right. Yeah,
Or let's do a Hans Zimmer show.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Everybody's going to show up for that.
Exactly.
How
And I've
about we do
watched them.
Beethoven Ninth? Oh, I
Yeah.
don't know. I've heard
Oops.
it
I'm gonna
before.
give my if I have season tickets, that's the time they either give them away or they don't show up,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, they don't show
So
up.
that's helped in that popular music and the use of full symphony in those big movies, Star Wars
Yeah,
and all the big movies, and then just making it more of a pop music of our time. And I'm even though I'm taking music, and some of it's my music that I've written now. I've done two or three on there, I know, but I'm combining it in that style. But nevertheless, it's a good time to be where I'm standing. I think that would have a lot to do with it. It'd be a lot harder 20 years ago, and I think I got a little run here for a while, in that something like Yellowstone comes out, and
oh
the whole
yeah,
world country
yeah,
goes, wow.
yeah.
I mean, everybody was Dallas. Uh, that movie that John Travolta made, they're
Yeah.
still playing it and talking about it. It was a game changer. There's something about that, about Texas and about our lifestyle, that people in Connecticut go, what? No kidding. This whole style of music has an interest to people. Um, I can't say why, but it just
I can tell
does.
you why. I can tell you
Yeah,
exactly why.
yeah,
It makes you feel good.
right.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
the bottom line. I mean, we talk about it, and I hear people go, "Oh, the world's in this, crappy place. We're all depressed."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it is. But the bottom line is, pop music is pop music.
Hmm.
And I have studied the history of where we've gone with music and how
Hmm.
it's not changed, but has changed. And
Right.
people want to listen to old stuff. They want to listen to stuff pre 1990. Well, why
Hmm.
is that? You
Hmm.
know, do you think, I always say this to people, I said, if Glenn Miller was alive, which he wouldn't be even now, when he wrote Little Brown Jug or Moonlight Serenade, that he would say, dang, they're still playing my music 80 years ago? I mean 80 years,
Yeah.
no.
No, you're right.
Good music. And so when you listen to something like what you guys do, to me, now obviously I have a little bit of that cowboy thing going on here and all, but it's the thing about it, there's some history there with the music,
Hmm.
but the other thing about it is when you perform with this, like the CD you gave me, there's no, and you mentioned a while ago, you're talking about Ray. There's nobody standing out. I'm the lead guitar player. Ooh, watch me. None of that happens. It is a combination of people playing stuff that they love to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you might throw in, I think there's a couple of pedal steels on one of your songs or something like
Absolutely.
that. Or you'll
Absolutely.
throw in something, a little guitar,
Piano,
lick,
guitar. Yeah. You'll relate to this, preaching to the choir in a way. But one reason that I love live music so much is that it literally takes us back to where we have to communicate. There's no way I can play live until that bass player lays down a line. I hear the chord from the guitar player, and it might be a grouchy chord or it might be a sweet chord,
yeah,
and that's going to make me go, "Oh, I'm friendly," or "Hey, you want to rock?"
yeah,
And all this interaction that's what music to me is. That is, I hate the word to use, but the word symphony is to make all that, and the beauty of musicians communicating, and you're getting to sit out there in the audience and watch that happen. And even though our stuff is written down, it's still communication to where they have to come in at the right time. These lines have to flow and weave together. And then there's a guy that's going to play whatever he feels fantastic, and all that together. And that's a live moment. And I tell people, I'm so proud of the album, like just unbelievable.
You should be. It's a phenomenal product, brother.
To hear it live is 10 times, 100
Oh
times.
yeah.
Oh man, it just knocked you
That's
over.
why I can't wait to hear it.
I know.
I mean, because I would listen to it, I was kind of surprised. It wasn't kind of that's why when I talked to you, I said, "Who did all these arrangements?" Oh, that's me. I did those in the video.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. Okay, Mr. Cowboy Hat. All of a sudden, you're Mr. Oh, yeah.
While I'm feeding horses in the morning, I'm writing out bassoon parts of my brain.
I think it's a wonderful thing what you do, and the fact that you figured out differently in this era of nobody makes money in music unless you're touring,
Mm-hmm.
which is not fair anymore, but that's just the way it is.
Right.
And you figured this niche out that you could literally take that anywhere. You know that. It doesn't have to be in Texas.
Oh yeah. No, I've already knocking on London Symphony door. You know, my piano player on this album just did an album with the London Symphony last summer. I'm already saying I want the world to hear this. You know, I think they'll take it. I do.
Yeah, you're like from Texas. That's another thing. Oh, London? Are you kidding me?
Oh man.
I mean,
Oh,
I interviewed a gal a year and a half ago. She recorded Muscle Shoals. She's
Yeah.
a singer out of London.
Oh
She
yeah.
said I could hardly wait to go to Muscle Shoals.
Right. Exactly.
And I said,
I'll tell you a funny story about London. I'll be real quick. But while I was playing with the Cowboys, we did the first international football game in London.
"Oh yeah,
Went over there for the first time. Went to Wembley Stadium, and the band and the musicians got stuck. It was a terrible day. Got stuck with the cheerleaders on our own plane to take the band and musicians and cheerleaders and the extra people they had hired to go to London. And they had hired, and then we had to pair up. And so to show up and to room together and all that stuff, we got paired. And I got paired with a Dallas JR lookalike. Okay. And this guy he looked like JR, but he was as goofy as they come. And I'm thinking, oh man, I'm going to be stuck with this guy. We get off the plane, and I'm not kidding you. I've never had, and I was with him. We had to go. We went everywhere, and you know, they were so nuts about that. London was, I mean, we never waited in line. We got free food, free alcohol, free everything. We walk into a pub, and oh God, that's JR. That's JR.
oh, because they really thought it was him.
They thought it was him.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And so we were standing at that giant big club that they have in there, and there was a huge line all the way around it. Oh, come here, right up the front, you know, just right in. So, yeah, there's people like we're back to that thing saying about how crazy they are about Texas, but you're right.